It was a dark Friday in Jerusalem. Dark clouds hovered over Golgotha. History was about to change forever. The sky watched, waiting for a pivotal, world-altering moment to unfold. At the base of 3 crosses, a Roman centurion followed his orders. It was just another crucifixion for him. This time, the man was Jesus of Nazareth. The centurion's job was simple and clear. He had to make sure that Jesus died. He was determined to carry out his duty exactly as he was told. Around the 6th hour, a strange darkness fell. It covered the entire land. This darkness lasted for 3 hours, until the 9th hour, creating a sense of foreboding. At the 9th hour, Jesus cried out. His voice was loud and full of anguish. My God, why have you forsaken me?" he shouted to the heavens. After this loud cry, Jesus took his final breath. With that last breath, his suffering on the cross had finally come to an end, and he died. At that exact moment, a startling event occurred. The veil in the temple suddenly tore in two. It ripped from the very top all the way to the bottom. The Roman centurion stood facing Jesus. Seeing all that had happened, he was truly amazed. He said, "Truly, this man was the Son of God." His heart was stirred. That day changed the Roman soldier's life. The man in charge of the execution was deeply shaken. Everything he thought he knew was now completely different and transformed. He went from being an executioner to a witness. He had pierced Jesus' side with a spear. Now he was the first Gentile to believe in him. He decided to leave his high rank. He gave up his position in the Roman army. He chose to join the small group of Jesus' dedicated followers. He traveled to faraway lands. He shared the gospel message with great passion. He spoke as someone who had seen it all and had been completely transformed by it. His life ended tragically. Church history remembers him by the name Longinus. His story became one of faith and ultimate sacrifice for his newfound belief in Jesus. Before that Friday, Longinus was a centurion. Centurions were respected commanders in the Roman legion. Each one was in charge of more than 100 trained soldiers. They were known for their strict discipline. They were also admired for their great courage. Their effectiveness on the battlefield made them legendary figures within the powerful Roman military. His life had been about toughness and violence. Duty to the Roman Empire was everything to him. He lived by a code of strength and complete obedience. To become a centurion, strength was not enough. A man also had to be intelligent. He needed to be a good strategist and, above all, completely ruthless. Longinus was exactly that kind of man. His life was built on discipline and order. He followed Rome's commands without any hesitation, blindly obeying every single order given. He had seen death many times before. It never made him flinch. He had carried out many orders without a second thought, becoming a tool of the empire. On that morning, the city was still quiet, but hurried footsteps could be heard. Whispers carried a name through the shadows. Jesus of Nazareth, the man from Galilee. He had been arrested the night before. This happened in the Garden of Gethsemane. He was betrayed by Judas Iscariot with a kiss on the cheek. Judas was one of his own disciples. He had sold Jesus out to the authorities. His price for the betrayal was just 30 pieces of silver, a small sum. Jesus was taken before the Sanhedrin. This was the council of chief priests. They accused him of the serious crime of blasphemy against their God and traditions. Their accusation was based on his claim. He had declared himself to be the Son of God. For this, they beat him, spat on him, and quickly condemned him. However, they did not have the power. They could not legally execute him. For a death sentence, they needed the official approval of the Roman authorities who governed them. So at dawn, they brought him to Pilate. Pontius Pilate was the Roman governor of Judea. He held the ultimate power over life and death in that province. Pilate sat on his judgment seat. He looked at Jesus with great curiosity. He asked him a direct question. "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus gave a calm and simple reply. He did not argue or deny it. He simply said to the governor, "You have said so," confirming the title. The chief priests and elders kept accusing him. They listed many supposed crimes. But Jesus stood there and remained completely silent through all of their accusations and shouting. Pilate was confused by this behavior. He leaned closer to Jesus and spoke, "Don't you hear their accusations? Why don't you defend yourself against these serious charges?" Jesus still said absolutely nothing at all. He did not speak a single word. He offered no justification for his actions and no defense for his own life. Pilate was completely astonished by this. He had seen many criminals before him. They would often beg, lie, and weep in order to try and save their lives. But this man was different. He had a strange and overwhelming calmness about him. It was a peaceful dignity that Pilate had never seen in a prisoner before. Just then, a messenger arrived in a hurry. He brought an urgent message for Pilate. The message was from his wife, and it was about the prisoner Jesus. Her message was a strong warning. "Have nothing to do with this innocent man," she urged. "I have suffered greatly today in a dream because of him." Pilate became restless in his seat. He felt that something much bigger was happening. It was a situation that he was powerless to control or to stop. During the Passover festival, a custom existed. It was traditional to release one prisoner. The governor would let one condemned man go free as a sign of goodwill. Pilate saw this as a possible way out. He offered the crowd a clear choice. They could choose to release either Jesus or a man named Barabbas. Barabbas was a notorious criminal. He was well known as a dangerous murderer. The choice between him and the peaceful Jesus seemed obvious to the governor, Pilate. But the priests stirred up the crowd. They influenced the people to shout angrily. The crowd demanded, "Release Barabbas to us. We want Barabbas to be freed." Pilate raised his hands to quiet them. He asked the noisy crowd a question. "Then what shall I do with Jesus?" he asked, hoping for a reasonable answer. The crowd roared back with great fury. Their voices were united in a single demand: "Crucify him." They all shouted together, their anger filling the air. Pilate was very uneasy about this. He tried to reason with them one more time. "Why? What evil has this man done?" He asked them again, but their response was even fiercer. Their shouts grew louder and more intense. "Crucify him, crucify him," was the only answer that they gave to him. Pilate saw that he was powerless. He could not stop the rising tide of fury. The crowd's anger was too strong for him to stand against on his own. He took a basin filled with water. In front of the entire crowd, he washed his hands. It was a symbolic gesture to show he was not responsible. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he declared. "His fate is now your responsibility." He then freed Barabbas and gave Jesus to the soldiers to be crucified. The fate of the Son of God was sealed. The soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium. Centurion Longinus stood firmly at the entrance, watching everything that was happening. He had overseen many punishments before. He had watched countless men die. But on this particular day, something felt very different about this execution. The prisoner before him did not resist. He did not scream in pain or fear. He did not curse his captors or beg them for any kind of mercy. He endured every single blow quietly. It seemed as if he knew it was necessary. He accepted the suffering with a strange and unsettling sense of purpose. The soldiers were cruelly amused by him. They stripped off all his clothing. They tied him tightly to a pillar, and then they began to whip him. The whip fell again and again. It tore his flesh without any pity. But even through all this terrible pain, Jesus still did not cry out in agony. Longinus watched with his arms crossed. His face showed years of violence. But something in his eyes was starting to change as he watched the scene unfold. The other soldiers started to mock Jesus. They put a purple robe on him. They twisted thorns into a crown and pushed it hard onto his head. Blood streamed down Jesus' face, yet his eyes remained open and steady. They were filled with a calm dignity that was completely unshaken by the pain. They placed a stick in his hands. It was meant to look like a scepter. They knelt before him and laughed, shouting, "Hail, King of the Jews!" Longinus did not join their mockery. He just stood there and watched them. For the first time in years, he felt a growing sense of deep unease. He felt uneasy, not because of the violence. He was used to that. It was because of the incredible dignity of this beaten and humiliated man before him. They spat on him in contempt. They hit him on the head with the stick. Finally, tired of their cruel game, they prepared him for his crucifixion. But Longinus could not look away. A feeling, long asleep, began to stir. He could not understand why this man did not try to defend himself. He did not understand the lack of hatred. In the middle of all this humiliation, Jesus' face showed only a deep and profound compassion for his tormentors. While the others were laughing, he questioned. He began to wonder about this man. Who truly was this man? He thought to himself, feeling a growing sense of awe. He did not know the answer yet, but he would find out very soon. On that day, Longinus would witness the greatest act of love the world had ever seen. The soldiers pushed Jesus out of the praetorium. They placed a heavy, rough cross on his shoulders. The journey to the place of crucifixion, Golgotha, had finally begun. Centurion Longinus marched at the front. His job was to clear a path. He had to lead the prisoner through the crowded streets to the place of execution. Jesus moved forward through shouting crowds. Some people spat on him in disgust. Others hurled insults and curses at him as he struggled with the heavy cross. But some people in the crowd wept silently. Among them was his mother, Mary. She desperately tried to see her son through the pushing and shoving of people. Jesus' weakened body finally collapsed. He fell hard onto the stone street. It was the first time he had fallen under the heavy weight of the cross. Soldiers hit him again, yelling, "Get up!" With a painful effort, he slowly rose. Mary reached him just as he fell for a second time, overcome with weakness. Mary rushed to her son's side. She knelt beside him, whispering, "I am here." Jesus looked at her and said, "You see, Mother, I make all things new." His body was starting to give way. The heavy cross was too much for him. Jesus fell once again, and this time he could not get back up. Longinus watched this all very closely. He had seen many defeated men before, but Jesus was not defeated. Something inside him could not be broken by the pain. The centurion, Longinus, grabbed a man. He was a passerby from the countryside. He commanded the man, "You there, pick up that cross and carry it." As they continued on their way, some women wept openly. Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves." Longinus heard these words. Something shook deep inside of him again. Who was this man who could think of others even when he was about to die? At last, they reached Golgotha. It was a dry, desolate hill. The 3 crosses were already prepared, and the soldiers began their grim and terrible work. Jesus did not struggle against them. He stretched out his arms willingly. It was as if he was freely surrendering his body to the executioners and the cross. A soldier held his arm down firmly. Another soldier raised a heavy hammer. The sound of the hammer hitting the nail echoed as the crowd watched the scene. When the 3 men were crucified, the soldiers raised the crosses. Jesus was in the center, with a criminal on each side of him, hanging there. One criminal mocked Jesus, shouting, "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and save us." But the other criminal rebuked him for his disrespectful words and tone. The second criminal said, "We deserve this, but this man has done nothing wrong." Then he turned to Jesus and whispered, Jesus, remember me in your kingdom." Jesus replied with a solemn promise. His words would resonate through history. "Truly, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise," he promised the man. Longinus heard this from his post. He could not believe what he was hearing. He had never seen anyone like this Jesus, who showed such grace in suffering. As time passed, the sun faded. A deep darkness covered the whole land. Jesus, still hanging on the cross, spoke words of forgiveness for all to hear. "Father, forgive them," he prayed aloud. "They do not know what they are doing." A shiver ran through Longinus's chest as he heard this incredible prayer. Jesus' body began to fail. He cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Then, gathering his last strength, he shouted, "It is finished." He then raised his eyes to heaven. "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." With those final words, he bowed his head, and then he died. Suddenly, the earth began to quake. A violent earthquake shook the city of Jerusalem. Rocks split apart, and the temple veil tore completely in two from top to bottom. The mocking crowd fell silent. Their faces were now filled with terror. The centurion, Longinus, dropped to his knees in complete and utter amazement and awe. With a trembling voice, he declared, "Truly, this man was the Son of God." He became the first Gentile to publicly acknowledge the crucified Christ as divine. It was Roman law to confirm death. So Longinus took up his spear. He pierced Jesus' side with one swift thrust, and blood and water flowed out. Tradition says the blood healed his eyes. At that moment, he finally understood. He had not executed a simple rebel. He had pierced the Son of God himself. He fell to his knees once more. This time, he was not just a soldier. This time, he knelt down as a true believer. His life forever changed. Longinus could not return to his old life. The image of Christ on the cross haunted him. He resigned from the army and left his past behind him forever. He joined the disciples of Jesus. He learned from those who had known him. The man who was once an executioner now proclaimed the gospel with great passion. For many years, he traveled and preached. His testimony was very powerful. He would often say, "I watched him die. Yet in his death, I found new life." But Rome did not forgive such betrayals. Longinus was eventually arrested and persecuted. He was offered freedom if he would deny his newfound faith in Jesus Christ. Longinus refused to deny his Savior. He stood firm in his belief. The same empire he had once served with loyalty now condemned him to death as a traitor. He was beheaded on a lonely hill. Longinus died as a martyr for his faith. His story is remembered as one of a witness who saw, believed, and died for Christ.